school board meeting, and we are going to start with the flag salute. Board Member Dale Jensen, will you lead us in the salute?
Yes, please rise. Hand over heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. All right. It's now time to open public comment. Have we received any cards this evening?
Yeah, I think you're.
Am
you
I in
got
the
a few
wrong
things.
spot?
Yeah, I think you're on closed session.
I am. Moving on. Wow, how did I miss that? We are moving on.
Yeah, I think because I think you were on.
I was. I'm sorry. We're on the agenda review.
Yeah.
Any items to pull or add? Nope. Okay, next up, special presentations, correspondence, superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I want to take just a few minutes to go through some of the great things that have been going on in the district over the last few weeks since we had our last board meeting. So this is from the Bristow Library. They have a display up there celebrating Asian American Pacific Islander authors. And so if you get a chance to go by our libraries, you can see lots of great things going on. One of my favorite events each year is when some of our fifth graders do their wax museums, where they learn about a historical figure and then teach other students and adults about them when they come to visit them. So this was out at Marsh Creek, those students doing that. We continue to have our partnership with Street Smarts, which is an organization that comes every year to teach our students about street safety with bicycles, with skateboards, with scooters, et cetera. And so we appreciate their partnership. And often they help us get helmets and so forth for students as well. This was a neat activity at Mary Casey Black where Mrs. Steele's fifth graders were taking surveys created by some of the third graders there. They were teaching about sample size and data. So great way to have a real world activity that also brought some education as well. This is some great chalk art from Bristow Middle School on May 13th. So really some talented young artists there. And then it's really excited to be in this time of the year and see the things that we haven't maybe seen in a while. So here's the spring carnival that took place at Brentwood Elementary. And it's a tradition that's been there a long time, but some of those things we haven't been able to have. So it's wonderful to have them back. I love this picture from, this is out at the Beyer Nail House Museum where Mrs. Cook's third graders from Marsh Creek are getting a little bit of a different lesson than maybe what they're used to in the schoolhouse that's out there. So experiencing that. This was a neat, it might be a little bit difficult to see on the picture overhead, but this is Mrs. Odiasi's students. They're science students at Edna Hill, and they're learning about the properties of visible light. And so they did a lot of different activities to determine the path of light. You can see like a little red laser light that's going there. And so it was really a nice way to see the kids so enthusiastic about something going on. And then this is Ron Nunn's Got Talent. So the talent show came back this year. So fun activity, always to see all the amazing things our kids can do. I wanted to highlight a new thing that we're trying out at both Cray and I think, is it Marsh Creek? Is that the other one that we're doing it? Where's it at? Anybody else? All right. There's one other school in our district, sorry, that we're doing it at. But we're switching away from the paper trays and we're trying these red baskets. And Mr. Jones was sharing that it's cutting our trash by about 50%, which is pretty impressive when you think of all the waste. It does create some washing and sanitation work that happens afterwards. So anyway, something that we're working, and I appreciate the staff that's taking that on. And then I love just anything with bugs. So kids, these are Cray Elementary kids getting up close and personal with some very large African bugs that were brought to them as part of a reverse field trip there. This is also the time of year where we start welcoming our fifth grade families and introducing them to middle school for next year. And so these are, this is the sixth grade parent orientation at Edna Hill Middle School and getting those students excited about next year and the parents oriented. We're back to having open houses. So this is a great time to celebrate so much amazing work that's gone on through the year. And so we're excited to have those back as well. How does your garden grow? So some of these traditions of musicals that have taken place over the years. So these are the first graders out at Pioneer. So thanks to all the teachers and staff that worked hard on that. And then this is just a little bit of a different way of looking at the orientations. So these are the Bristow leadership students that are presenting to the fifth graders at Ron Nunn School and telling them what to prepare for when they come to middle school. So lots of ways to get our students ready. I want to congratulate the Bristow Jazz Band, who on May 22nd won first place at the Music in the Parks Festival at Six Flags Great America. So that was really exciting for them. So this was a cute activity. I was able to see this during their open house night. So Mrs. Ford and some of the other first grade teachers also had these bridge building activities that they did with students. And they had to follow a blueprint and then build the bridges and then write about it. So pretty impressive for first graders when you see their writing and what they were able to put together. So some future engineers there. So that was great. And then I was also lucky enough to be out for Brentwood Elementary's fourth grade Gold Rush Day. So unfortunately, I hit like the root beer and card station at like 9 a.m., which was a little early for me. But I did get to enjoy the cornhusks were definitely better to do at 9 a.m. than they would have been at 11 or noon that day in terms of how hot it was. So lots of fun out there. This is Ron Nunn School visiting the Byron Ale House, but just another view of some of the things that those students go out there and do. And just really want to thank all the volunteers and docents that put so much time and energy into that to give our third graders such a wonderful experience. Open house from Loma Vista celebrating, another nice thing. This was a great student leadership activity. So student leadership that had raised money through the years, the fifth graders voted on and decided to bring in chairs for every class at Pioneer. So if you go out there now, the classes all have this outdoor reading or activity area because of the chairs that were brought in from these students. And so you can see the truck being delivered there. Of all the chairs that came in. They worked out a deal, I think it was with Home Depot. And so just really congratulations on a great idea. Then this is the history of Brentwood, another great traditional play that took place. This happened for Marsh Creek's third graders prior to open house this year. And then also, I'm hoping to get some more pictures next meeting for you, but this is one of the pictures. This is Edna Hill's team. This is on the way to the what the students' usually favorite area is, which is the dining hall at Iowa State University. So that's their mascot. But we have, I think, 4 teams that ended up going to Iowa State for the World Finals that were there. And so a great experience for them to be on a college campus. This is a fifth grade tradition at Pioneer Elementary, which is Colonial Days. So these students break up and teach younger kids what the jobs would be like as they come through and give them an educational experience there. And then this is a fun way to get kids enthusiastic about being respectful, being responsible, and trustworthy. And so this is a BMX assembly that was arranged for out at Loma Vista. So lots of fun things there. This was a great thing this year that took place out at Marsh Creek. It was a Girl Power Running Club. And so I just wanted to thank Mrs. Ramey, Mrs. Moreno, and Mrs. Vega for really helping to start this club. And this was the last day this year, but I hear that they're going to continue it on. So that was really exciting. And then last night was Harvest Grove Virtual Academy's their first STEAM night. So they had mad science and drones and art activities for their students in the Virtual Academy. So rate it. And that is the end of my update.
Thank you, Dr. Eden. Any board member comment or committee reports?
I went to the delegate assembly meeting in Sacramento 2 weeks ago. And is it not on?
Pull it a little closer.
Okay. I attended the delegate assembly meeting at the California School Board Association in Sacramento about 2 weekends ago. And there should be a climate change task force report in your email attachments. And they're also sponsoring a transportation bill. I think I can't remember the number now, but it's supposed to fully fund bus transportation to public schools. So it's going through state legislature right now.
Very good. Stephanie?
I'd like to ask if we can do a moment of silence for those that lost their lives in the recent shooting in Texas. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, if we can just have a quick moment of silence for 19 seconds. All right, thank you.
On that same line, could you or John, can you give an update? Precautions.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, we, unfortunately, from time to time, we get a threat via social media to a school. And so anytime we do that, that's immediately turned over to the Brentwood Police Department. And so that happened yesterday. The police investigated. They didn't substantiate it, but out of an abundance of caution, we both issued a letter last night to all of the families and let them know that there was a threat made and that there was going to be a police presence there this morning. And then we had multiple members of the Brentwood PD on campus this morning. And then our school resource officer was there most of the day, as well as many other staff members that were there just helping out. And I think I just want to acknowledge especially the Bristow staff that came together, because it's a tough day sometimes when those things happen, and to be able to have an adult that skillfully works with kids within their classes to support them, that makes a big difference. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other updates from any board members? Okay, we'll move on to presentation of induction certificates.
Yes, and we're lucky enough to have Emily here with us, who's going to tell us a little bit about induction. Do you want to?
Right.
Let me grab you.
All right, thank you all. So most of our induction candidates who've completed this evening are not here tonight, mostly because they are busy finishing up their year and getting, final grades in and planning all those end of the year activities. But I think, regardless of whether our teachers are here or not, it's important for us to remember to acknowledge them. So the sort of 2-second summary of induction is a sort of 2-year training for new teachers. Once they have completed their university courses and they have a job, there's 2 additional years they do of on-the-job training, and that really centers around weekly meetings with a mentor teacher, so who is a master teacher that has had numerous years of experience, and then also monthly professional development that is provided by the induction program. And so just also a little bit of a reminder of sort of what these particular candidates, because I feel like, right, let's go back in time to 17-18 school year when our teachers that have now completed induction started, as I call them, the before times, before COVID. And so they decided to be teachers, thinking that their teaching experience would be much like the last 100 years of teaching. 18-19, they enroll in their courses and start their exciting world of being a teacher. They start that student teaching in the 19-20 school year, and about halfway through the student teaching, COVID hits, schools get shut down, and they can't finish their student teaching. But this group of teachers did not say, I'm going to pause. They did not say, I'll show back up later. They didn't say, call me when when the pandemic is over and I'll come back and get those jobs. They signed up and said, I'm ready and I'm willing and I'm excited to be a teacher, no matter what that means. And so for their first year of teaching, they taught virtually, and they tried to figure that out like all the rest of us. And this year they was along with their students, many times first time in the classroom or first time in a long time. So was it for this group of teachers. And they came back into classrooms and were willing and ready and excited to support their students as we all figured out how to deal with this year, where we're sort of a little bit one foot still in COVID and one foot starting to move out of that. So for this particular group of teachers, an extra thank you for them for continuing to show up and start their teaching under such unique circumstances and their willingness to do that. So I'm going to call up if there are any teachers that are here, if they can please come up. But I know that probably all of them are at home. I got many emails today saying, I was going to come, but I'm sorry, I've got stuff. But I still want to call their names, because I think it's important that we recognize them and just let all of you know who is that. So this year, our award of certificates of achievements are given to Ariel Gordon, Maria Gomez Caravantes, Joanne Dahl, Kaylin Matson, Mamie Murphy, Madeline Bustos, Michelle Bagg, Mallory Muniz, Lizette Rodriguez, Joan Sandoval, and Amy Schwartz. So if we can give them a round of applause. And since all of our principals are in the audience, we can also give our principals a round of applause because they gave so much additional help and support to these new teachers. So thank you, principals, for all your work.
And Emily, thank you for all the work that you put into not only our new teachers, but new teachers throughout Far East Contra Costa County. We know you're a tremendous part of their professional development and their support system, and we truly appreciate it. So thank you for all your work.
For Emily?
Yeah,
there you
Emily.
go.
Thank you, Emily. Okay.
So one of the things that's listed on there is a welcome celebration, and this is just sort of a teaser. So we have public comment coming up, and then under consent agenda, we have several new significant appointments within the district. So should we get through that time after consent items, we would take a quick break and celebrate those new appointments.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment cards this evening?
I make a motion that we open public comment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we open public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move that we close public comment.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we close public comment. All in favor? Aye.
Unless there was someone here.
Aye.
Public comment is closed. Okay, moving on to number 8, our consent items. Are there any items that anybody would like to pull or discuss at this time?
Yes, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to just point out a few of the items that are in there. So one of the things that you'll see in your walk-in green document is several new hires. And while we're thrilled for all of them, there's a few key ones that I want to point out. So the first one is Kara Ravina, who we are recommending be hired as the vice principal of Bristow Middle School. And I'd like to ask Dr. Ovick just to stand up and introduce her real quick.
Madam Secretary.
You don't have one?
Hello? No, there we go. All right, I would like to introduce Kara Ravina. Kara was impressive in both rounds of interviews. She comes to us with close to 20 years classroom experience teaching music in grades 4th through 12th in various districts within the Bay Area. Currently, she's serving her second year as vice principal at Northgate High School. Both her within the interview process and her reference checks, it was noted that she has great initiative. She empowers the staff. She believes in promoting a collaborative culture, and relationships are key to success. Kara also lives within our community and has 2 children who attend BUSD. I'd like to welcome Kara.
Okay, Kara, was there anything that you wanted to say or introduce yourself?
I want to say hello and thank you. I'm just delighted to be part of this team. I love what the Brentwood Union District values in all the things that they communicate to the community, and I can't wait to be part of that. So I'm very excited. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, Kara. So the second person that I want to point out in here is not a stranger to this board. He's our current Director of Student Services, and it's the recommendation of myself and the interview panels that saw him that Chris Calabrese be promoted to the position of Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. For those of you that don't know Chris has been the principal of Loma Vista Elementary prior to being our Student Services Director. Before that, he was the principal in Rancho Los Pasitos in Livermore. He was vice principal at Edna Hill, Garin, and Loma Vista School. This year, he was honored as a graduate of distinction from the Liberty High School District. And a couple years ago, he was the Pupil Services Administrator of the Year for the entire state of California. And I think when both panels took a look at Chris, what they really saw is somebody with excellent interpersonal communication skills, somebody who had success in multiple positions, and somebody who was from here and committed to this community. And so I'd like to introduce Chris Calabrese. Yeah, I'd rather not give him the microphone. So,
He dedicated his time to me for the budget presentation.
okay.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to introduce anybody that's here with you?
I'd like to introduce my lovely wife and me. And my son Quinn. Someday my daughter-in-law Shar. My son Toby, who just got his driver's license today. Nice job.
All right.
And my daughter Gracie, all of them went through Loma Vista.
All right. Welcome, Calabrese's. Nice to see. Shar, I haven't had the chance to meet you, so don't leave without getting a chance to stop by and say hi, okay? All right.
Monique, just real quick, just remember.
And then finally today on your green sheet, I want to introduce our recommendation for the principal of Ron Nunn Elementary. So Nick Casey is here tonight, and Nick may look familiar because Nick worked here for 11 years prior to going to the Rio Vista School District. And so Nick, for the last 6 years, has been the principal of D.H. White Elementary School, where he's done a fantastic job. And so prior to that, he taught kindergarten here, as well he was an administrative designee for Pioneer Elementary School when he was a teacher. I think the group really loved Nick's passion, and one of the things that they were super impressed by, and it was confirmed, that he knew every kid's name at his school, and some said that he could even call them out by the car that they were in as they were driving up through the loop. And so I think both interview panels were super impressed with Nick. I'm very proud of Nick, as I hired Nick for his first kindergarten job many years ago. And so, and happy to see, I think I see one of his former kindergarten mates out there in the audience. And so I'd like, on behalf of the interview panels and myself, I'd like to recommend Nick Casey for the principal of Ron Nunn Elementary. So. All right. Nick, would you like to introduce your family or say anything?
First of all, I just wanted to thank you all very much for the opportunity. It's a responsibility that I take very seriously, and I look forward to getting started at Ron Nunn. I know it's some big shoes to fill over there with Mrs. Wallace. And thank you to all my family and support system here, and former teachers and mentors. And it's thank you, everybody. I'm very excited.
Great. So, and then the final thing that I want to say is at our last board meeting, we approved removing the interim from the title of Allison Martin as our principal for Garin Elementary. And we also wanted the opportunity to celebrate her tonight with cake as we go forward. So let's give a round of applause to Allison. All of that we just said besides Allison, because she was formally approved. So nobody's been formally approved yet. So that's really all on you. So at this point, we're asking you to approve the personnel report. If it goes well, then we'll stop and we'll have cake. If it doesn't go well, I'm not really sure what to do with the cake. So we're hoping it'll go forward.
I make a motion that we approve consent items 8.0 to 8.1.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent items. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Let's
Right.
have some cake.
Congratulations, everybody. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break. There's cake up here. And then all of you are welcome to stay and or go afterwards. Know that we'll be following this with a budget presentation. And so, which goes great with cake. but don't feel bad if you have to go. So come and get some cake.
Very stimulating. Very stimulating.
Sammy.
Sammy, we'll see you soon. Remember what we talked about?
Yes, I am at your beck and call. All right. I'm on speed dial, all right?
Mr. President, I
Yes, sir.
would like to make a motion that perhaps we could think about letting the principals go since they've got a busy.
I would agree
Coming.
wholeheartedly that that is a great idea.
I don't think you need a full motion. You can just.
No,
kind
no.
of agree.
I disagree. I think they should.
I think we'll allow it. We're going to override you, Robin.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Guys, take care. Yes, occasionally we can be serious.
Thank you guys very much. Have a great last week and a half of school.
Yes. Thank you too.
Bye. Those of you that make big bucks, you got to stay. Or getting paid overtime.
All right. Well, we will continue our board meeting with item number 9, hearings and appeals. Looks like we have a couple.
Yeah, thank you. There's 2 hearings tonight. I'll speak to them both briefly and you can act on them. They're basically hearings for one, the district budget, which has to be open tonight, and also the LCAP. So you need to take each action separately to open them for public hearings. And then later in the evening, we have information on both of them. They'll be presented and then it stays open until the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we open 9.0 public hearing proposed for the 22-23 BUSD budget.
It's been moved and seconded that we open item 9.0. All in favor? Aye.
Anybody want to speak at it? Okay, I'll make a motion that we close 9.0.
No, they stay
They stay open.
Oh, well.
Did we open 9.1?
Now you open 9.1.
I'll make a motion that we open 9.1, the public hearing proposed. School district local control.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to open item 9.1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 10, presentations, reports, and other action items. Report out of closed session. We have 2 items to report out of closed session. Item number 1, a majority of the board in closed session voted 5-0 to reject Keenan claim number 600534-KNAK and company claim number 22009. Also in closed session, the governing board voted to approve a resignation agreement with a classified employee number 2022-02. The vote was 5-0. Moving on, also from closed session, item 10.1. We now have expulsion of student number 042022-09 presented. I will take a motion on that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the expulsion.
No, no, the other 2 were voted out. These have to be done live. 10.1.
Expulsion of student, I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation for expulsion of student 04-02022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.1, the expulsion of student 042022-09. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item 10.2.
Another motion that we approve the expulsion of student 04-2022-.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the stipulated expulsion of student number 04-2022-11. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 10.3, COVID-19 update.
Yeah, board, this is just a placeholder to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 response. So we continue to see a high level of cases in our area and throughout the state. We've definitely seen over the last month an increased number of both students and staff members that are reporting testing positive for COVID and that have had some significant absences as a result, both from staff and students going forward. We're starting to get drafts for what 22-23 school year might look like. That's something that they're still sorting out. I think it's fair to say that we can see a much higher reliance on over-the-counter home tests as opposed to testing labs and so forth that we've seen this year throughout the pandemic, so much so that it seems as if a student or a staff member tests positive, that they would be able to test at home using an over-the-counter test and be able to report that result coming back. That's what we're hearing right now. So we kind of have to see how that works through the system. They've also eliminated fully vaccinated from the language. So we don't know what impact that's going to have on those right now that aren't vaccinated. So right now our staff that haven't provided proof that they're fully vaccinated are required to test weekly. We don't know if that's going to continue or not. There's some contradictory information that's out there. So that'll be something that we'll be knowing in the next few weeks, hopefully. But it's likely we might not know all the way up until the start of our school year, since unfortunately sometimes legislators don't realize that there's a lot of school districts that start early like we do. And then the final piece is we will continue to have testing available at our schools and at the district office through the summer. That's our goal. We have that. It'll be a little bit of a narrowed down scope than what we've had, but we want to continue to have that available for our community and for our staff. And so we'll continue to come back and update you on that. So be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Eden? No, thank you. Moving on, item 10.4, presentation on preliminary district budget.
Good evening, board. I know this is why everyone's here tonight and tuning in, so I appreciate that. I'm going to walk through this pretty quickly tonight. This is basically the information provided for the hearing and sort of the initial take. I'll bring it back next meeting with really just a quick updates without the presentation, even though the presentation be included. So this is actually the proposed 22-23 budget that you're hearing tonight. The good news, excuse me, the good news is the state fiscal health has improved. And that's a good thing. If you read the news, all that's going on well. We know there's some trends in terms of inflation and recession that we need to watch for. But right now that does not look like it's going to affect next year. But as we've seen in the past, that does happen. Right now, everything's positive. And really right now, ongoing revenue is even above what the governor proposed last June, as well as what he proposed in January. So when we talk about assumptions, what do we talk about when technically the budget's brought to you as a board? What are the assumptions that we're using? And it's important there. And this year is unique, as I've explained, and I will tonight, is that there's known and unknown. And for me, and all the years I've been doing this, both as involved in budget as well as in the other roles I've had in district, this is really sort of the most wide open year of moving variables that we don't have a handle on yet because the legislatures haven't decided and all we hear is the rumor. So what we do know is the statutory COLA is now at 6.56, which is slightly improved over the January revise. And that is included in the budget projections for revenue. There's a TK add-on that's included in the revenue projections, and it's basically additional money that comes in for every ADA for TK. And then there's an additional options in terms of how we actually calculate our ADA next year, which I'll talk about further in the meeting. And that's also included in the budget. What's unknown, and these items are not included in the budget, they will be when the legislature finally comes around, which will be 45 days. And I'll update you within 45 days of when the state actually adopts the budget. And those are, number one, is we don't know what the final language is to calculate ADA. There's about 4 different moving options out there, as well as a 5th option that says, no, leave them the way it is. They can figure it out. There's enough other money coming in. So there's a lot of movement and a lot of noise across the legislature and the governor in terms of how to do this. But we do know that there's more money. It's just where is it going to come? Second one is one-time funds. There's a proposal out there about $1,500 a kid in one-time money. We don't know all the details about that and how it, and what the legislature's saying, what the governor's saying is sort of different, and how that money's going to come to us and what we can do with it. The one thing right now that's kind of nice it's coming to us is unrestricted base funding, which means it gives us some flexibility without a lot of strings. However, we know that may change. There is a recommendation to actually add more money to the LCFF base. And right now that would be about the number that the governor proposed is about 270 a student above what everything is that is talked about up there in the known. And again, there's some wide open interpretations of how that does. That is not included in the budget. The county said, no, don't count on that yet. A fourth bullet is the extended learning program. The governor proposed about $800 a kid for this current year. He's moved that up to about $2,500 a kid for next year. For us, that's just over $4 million for us to run to provide extended learning programs. We don't know what all the rules. We don't know whether the legislature is going to try to take some of that money out of that program, put it somewhere else. We don't know. But we do know that we will have an extended learning program next year that will continue from what is going on this year. There's a recommendation that provides some districts some one-time deferred maintenance money that helps some of the districts catch up. We don't know what that looks like. It's anywhere from, for us, it's anywhere from, in terms of the interpretations, it's anywhere from about $1 million to $2.5 million. So you can see there's a range. We just don't know what to do. We know that that's needed and it'll be put to good use. And last is the idea that there's the meals will be universal in California. There's a caveat on that is California is going to cover whatever the federal government doesn't. So whatever students get free reduced lunch, the federal government will reimburse, the state's going to fill in the difference. And there's some conversation about what that means and how they're going to do applications and et cetera. So lots more to come. The bottom line is we know there's going to be more money than what we currently have proposed in the budget. We know there's more money. We can't go down the avenue of saying, here's where it's going to be and start to plan for it now. And then they change all the rules on us. COLAs is one of the big changes that we know for sure. The down there on the bottom, the May revise moved 22-23 to 6.56, which is 1.23% higher than the January budget. And you can see that the May revise for 23-24 and 24-25 are also slightly higher than what was proposed at the May revise. And those dollars are included in the multi-years. Expenditures are a reminder that not only is there revenue, but there's also expenditures that come along with us turning the page. And these you know about. There's step and column, the STRS and PERS, which we'll talk about, special education costs. It's just the cost of doing business in special education increases. Our liability insurance is going up just a little bit. We also have negotiated settlements that we're addressing and paying attention to as we work forward. Those expenditures do increase our costs. When we look at some of those things related to the COLA, you can see that the green bar in each of those years is the COLA that was received in those years. And just a reminder, in 2021, we did not receive a COLA. But on the right-hand side of each year graph is the expenditures that increased that year. So you can see in 1920 expenditures far outstripped the money that we got in COLA. But you can see in 2021, we got no new money, but we had new expenditures and turning the page. And you can see how that works out over time. When you look at the total, how the next 4 years are actually averaged in there, counting this, as you average these 5 years together, our COLA has just about kept up with the increasing costs, inclusive of our salary and benefit settlement agreements that we've made with employee groups. So we watch that closely. And it's, COLA is getting better, so that's going to be a positive for us. Just a reminder, PERS is increasing. 1 point in 22-23, where the prior rate was 26.1. The projected rates are a little bit lower, so that's positive for us. But you can see those rates will continue to sort of fluctuate as we go on, and we need to monitor that closely, especially as the stock market changes. If the stock market continues to go up or they increase interest rates, these things should be positive for us. But we'll have to monitor because we end up paying what is not covered in terms of the interest and the revenue that is made in those funds. Second one is STRS. And you can see in 22-23 this year, as we move into next year, we jump 2.18%. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And that's an expenditures that that's already folded into our assumptions in the budget. If you look at 22-23, just the combination of the PERS increase and the STIRS increase, we're looking at additional increase in costs without anything else changing of about $1.5 million based on current staffing. And then again, it's been built into the budget all the way along. It's an assumption that's built into a new expenditure. Another thing that affects us is ADA, and that's based on our enrollment. And you can see the dark black line is sort of our enrollment history through today, or actually just about a week ago. And you can see each of the grade level spans of how that makes. So there's a couple of things here that I like to point out. Number one, our enrollment increased this year, as it has in the last every year I've been here. So that's a positive thing, and we need to monitor that because we know eventually that may change and it may continue to grow. We don't know. And if you watch the real estate market around here, that's a positive thing. But you look at the price of houses going up, it does affect the families and the children that they have when they come into those homes. And normally, homes in the $1 million range, we don't see a lot of new families with young kids coming into it. But we need to monitor that. The other thing that I like to point out here is the orange bar on the bottom is the kindergarten enrollment, and the dark brown line at the top is the 8th grade enrollment. And you can see there's a difference. That means when those 8th graders leave us here in 6 days, and the kindergartners, and if we get basically the same number of kindergartners we've gotten in the past, we have about a 230 student difference that we need to make up over the summer to get back to where we were. So even though we're enrollment growth, we lose kids, we need to gain those kids in our process. So we're monitoring that. And right now the trends are positive, but again, we have a ways to go until school starts. Now, when we look at ADA, and there's a whole lot of stuff on here, what I want to point out is in 21-22, which is where we are now, at P2, our ADA went down, and I've talked about that quickly. The next 3 columns, which I've labeled at the bottom, A, B, and C, are 3 different methods to calculate ADA for next year. Just quickly, in the first column, A, is just taking next year's enrollment and calculating it 95% ADA. And have that played out. That's sort of what that is looking at the enrollment that we're projecting next year, calculating at 95%, and you can see that we get about 8,700 ADA. If you look at the next proposal that the governor has, that means we get to average the last 3 years, no caveats, et cetera. And you can see that helps us because we take 21-22 and the actual 21-22 and average it with 2021 and 19-20, and you can see we go to 88-22. So the averaging of 19-20 and 2021 increases that ADA rate. And when we looked at second interim, that was the number that was used, is using the governor's 3-year average. Now, not that it was confusing enough, really quickly, he said, well, what you can do is take your percent ADA in 19-20 and apply it to the enrollment in 21-22 and use that for your ADA in 22-23 and average it across. Now, if you followed that, it took me 2 days and 3 consultants at the state level to make sure I was doing the math right. But essentially that gives us an ADA of about 8960. Now, I'll point out it's still lower than 2021 because we had that decline and the loss of ADA. It still affects us, but you can see that it's a softer landing, and the governor and the legislature are trying to find options. So column C is the one that's used right now in the budget development that is provided for you tonight that will come back to you in 2 weeks. What we don't know is whether the legislature and the governor are going to change that rule and say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We'll do something different. So more on that to come. But again, it's complicated and we're trying to monitor closely.
Yeah, and just something to remember, it's an easy way that I look at it is every 100 students there is about $1 million, right? So it's just a quick thumbnail sketch to see how impactful it is, the difference between A and C, right? You're talking about $2 million in ongoing funds for the district.
Again, this is what the one that probably is giving me the most gray hair. Not that I have enough already, but it's something that we're watching, and our consultants that provide guidance on this across the state are watching it as well. And, even they're going, we're not sure what the governor and the legislature are going to do because there's lots of opinions on what to do with that. So when we look at when you look at COLA, which is here, what happens is that affects our per pupil base rate in the LCFF calculator. So you can see in 21, and actually that should be 22-23. The 22-23 adjusted base rates, you can see what those rates are for the base, our supplemental, because we get 29% of what that number would be for the supplemental rates. So you can see our estimated PPA for 22-23 is 10,000 students for TK3, 9,200 for 4 through 6, and 9,500 for 7 through 8. And that's an improvement because of COLA and a couple other things. Has nothing to do with the ADA. Then we take our ADA and you multiply by those numbers. But just for comparison's sake, you can see right now at a high school district, like someone close to us, they get $11,300 a kid. And so you can look at how that affects and what would be for us. And right now, if you took our three numbers, for K through 7-8, the average is about $9,600 a kid on average for us as a district. So another way to look at that for me is if we go back to second interim, the 22-23 projected revenue at second interim, using all the methods we had and what we knew at that time with the January COLA, was about $84.9 million. At P2, our ADA got trued up and we lost about 42 kids. And you can see that affected our revenue by about $168,000 because of the 3-year average methodology at that point. The next step is, okay, well, let's add 6.56 COLA to the base. And you can see that brings us back to a positive about $830,000. And that's comparing to the second interim. So it's a net change from second interim. Just the COLA gives us about $830,000 with the P2 ADA. The TK add-on is 1.5 million, and that's cumulative. So it's not 1.5 over 830. It's 830 improves to 1.5. So it's about $700,000 gets added to the budget just because of the TK add-on. Now, if we change to the governor's 3-year adjusted average, we bring our total revenue to about $2.8 million. So just that change in the ADA calculation increases our revenue by about $1.3 million, which is something Dana talked about really quickly, is that just gives you an idea of just the things that are added in the budget. And there's still a lot of moving parts not included in the budget that may affect this number up. And he could change the ADA proposal and affect that. It's just something we're gonna have to watch. Any questions on that? So sort of makes sense how that flows?
Yep.
So we've talked about the COLA. 2021 was it held to 1920. 21-22 the same. It was the higher of the two, and you can see the 22-23 is based on what we talked about already. These things are included in the expenditure, STRS and PERS. I will note in the second bullet, since second interim, we've added 7 staff, some on the regular ed and some on special ed, just because of our growth and our projections of what we need. And we look at that. There's several people involved in that, making sure we're making the right decision there. I've also included the additional staffing we'll need to open up a new school in 24-25. So in 24-25, there's expenditures included because we're going to have a principal and clerical and custodial staff that goes along with that, some potential teachers. We also have step and column increases built into the budget. Service costs, just the cost of doing business with what we do, those costs are included. Utilities are going up. It's something that we're watching very closely. And if you've gone to the gas station and paid attention to your electric bill, those are growing across the board. What I want to point out for utilities, well, we did a lot of stuff to save energy, right? Well, we've also put 8,000 Chromebooks out there, and there's a Chromebook card in every 3rd through 7th grade, 8th grade classroom, and those things are plugged in every day. So that has an effect. We know gas and electric costs are going up as well as garbage rates are going up, and it's something we're going to have to monitor. And some of those are already built into the budget, and we'll have to monitor that as those things really true up. We'll have to adjust the expenditures in the next year. And we also know there's one-time funding that we've received on what we're doing it now. And we know that we've talked all the way along that's going to continue our plan to use counselors and intervention teachers and the paras to go along with that. And we're also using it to address some of the deficit spending that we've seen to make some of our settlement agreements work. Assumptions continued. We know that we reached a settlement in March with BTA, and then in April or May with the rest of the groups, which was really 1% effective January and 3% effective July. Those assumptions are built, those costs are built into the budget. And we know that there's some one-time money needed to offset the deficit spending to go along with that. And the third bullet down there at the bottom as a reminder is that the agreements that we reached did include some contingency language. If new money comes in at the May revise, or especially when the governor adopts the budget, that will reopen the conversation on what goes along with those monies per the contingency language. And so it's a warning that I'll remind you a little later. This is just a reminder, again, looking at The green bars are the average per pupil revenue at first interim compared across the districts, because that's the last time that I can have data that I can compare to all districts. Those are the green lines, and you can see Brentwood is on the far left, and you can see Lafayette on the far right. Several of those districts have parcel taxes, and those are included in those districts that receive those. The black line that runs across is the percent salary to expenditure. So the left-hand column is revenue, and the right-hand column, or the right hand, is the percent expenditures to total revenue. And you can see that we have the highest percent to expenditures versus the other districts, with Mount Diablo pretty close, but the others are well below us, down in the 90 range, where we're over 90%. It's just something that we need to watch and pay attention to. Because if we all of a sudden come around and there's all of a sudden expenditure cuts that we have to make, if 94% of our expenditures in salaries and benefits, it's really hard to make cuts without affecting those costs. New costs. I've talked a little bit about this. We've added the 7 teachers and the special education aides. We know that there's costs associated with COVID next year. As Dana pointed out earlier, we're not quite sure what the state may or may not require us to do, but we will continue with some of the safety protocols that we have in the classrooms, with hand sanitizer spray and some of the wipes that allows us to help us keep our classrooms safe. We have filters in every room. We're changing those filters, and those aren't cheap. So those costs will continue for another year. We've added some staff. We know that there's some special ed cost increase that have come along, and we also know there's some revenue that comes along with that we're monitoring closely. And right now, there's no increase in the contribution at this time over what we planned at second interim. And then we know that supplies and utilities are things we need to monitor very closely, especially utilities. So when we look at the unrestricted budget, and now we're getting into the meat of what's going on, is there's 4 columns here. Is the budget that we adopted in June, the budget that we proposed and brought back to you a second interim, and then right now we've made some estimated actuals. And one of the points that I'll make here is that this was made basically at the end of May, and we still have 30 days to go in terms of our expenditures and utilities and the other types of things. So these still may change a little bit. We're as close as we can. And you can see that, revenue's gone up just a little bit. Expenditures have gone up, which I'll come back to. Contributions have gone up just a little bit because as expenditures increase, our contribution to routine restricted maintenance also goes up. And then you can see our revenue to expenditures deficit spending increased because our expenditures went up. And then our beginning balances didn't change, and our ending balance went down by about $1.2 million. So what changed? And as we look at the expenditures, if you've heard from teachers and Dana and everyone else, is we're really seeing quite a wide range and a high number of absenteeisms because of COVID and other issues. So I'm not saying that it's uncalled for, but we do know that we're seeing quite an increase of subs and uncovered. And so if we have an uncovered, and right now our sub rate is about $200, and if there's an uncovered, we do period coverage, and that's $50 to $75 per period that's added on. So our classified and especially our certificated sub costs, we've had to increase by $600,000 since second interim. And we're a little concerned that we may have to increase that more as those costs come in, because we won't get those payroll vouchers really here until next Friday, and then we close those books and move on. Books and supplies are up about $700,000. Most of that is the curriculum adoption that we purchased. Services and contracts are down, as well as the contributions is up just a little bit. So really the 2 big costs there is the curriculum adoption, as well as the sub costs, or the 2 big cost increase. And it's something that I went in and dug into really closely to make sure that was really clear and what really happened. And again, as we actually close the books and we come back and unaudited actuals, that will be more formalized. When you look at unrestricted multi-year, we see 21-22 is the current year, and then we have the proposed 22-23 budget, the 23-24, and the 24-25. And really, if we just look at the change between 21-22 and 22-23, you can see revenues jumped. And again, much of that we already saw at second interim, but about $2.3 million increase over what it was at second interim, just because of the changes in the May revise. Expenditures up because of all the things we've talked about. You can see our contribution has not increased that much because we've had some other revenue on the restricted side, especially in special ed, that's helped us level that out for this year, but you can see it starts to jump the year afters. We're not, at this point, we are not deficit spending in the next year, but remember, we have some contingency language once all the books are closed that will affect increased expenditures once we do that. And you can see the beginning balance increases right now. You can see what our 4.25 reserve is, and you can see some adjusted and assigned and unassigned balance, which I'll come back into and talk about later. And just really quickly, you can look at the revenue goes from $89 to $99 million really in 3 years. That's because of the COLA buildup. And one of the things to remember in that is when you adjust the base in this year, it increases every year. It not only the COLA, but it has an additive effect in the out years, which is a nice thing. And it helps us, and it's something we'll be talking about, I'm sure. And you can see without any other changes and without the contingency language built in, our ending balance increases at this time, which is a positive thing. Looking at the restricted budget. Again, we can see the second interim and the estimated actuals. Right now, our revenue goes up just a little bit because of some special eds and some other funding. Contributions went up just a little bit, which is more revenue. Our expenditures down, and I'll come back to that. You can see our deficit spending went from 3.8 to $9 million. That's a positive thing, only because we had expenditures falling out, which I'll talk about just a second, and our ending balance increases. So what happened? Well, we know our revenue was up, but our expenditures down. Really, certificated subs were up on the class because we have special ed teachers, so that's where those costs show up. Our classified salaries are up mainly because of subs, benefits down, books and supplies down a little bit, but you can see contracts and services are down by 2.2 million. What happens on the restricted side of the budget is we look at estimated actuals. We have to book all of our federal money as a budgeted expenditure line item. As we get close to the end of the year, well, we're not going to spend those money, so we reduce that expenditures, which means that money is going to show up in next year. We can't hide it, but it does affect this year's expenditures, which is why those expenditures are down. So it's not like we had something budgeted and we didn't do it. It wasn't we had a fiscal savings. We have to, so if we get $5 million, let's say I'll use ELAP as an example. If we get $5 million in ELAP and we don't have expenditures set up yet, I have to put the $5,000 in a 5,000 account and show it as an expenditure, even though we're not going to spend it. And at the end of the year, I have to take it back out and show it I have. So that's why those are coming down. So it's not like something fell out. It's something we had to budget. Now we take it out, we move it into next year. But it does have a positive effect on this year's budget. And more to come on that. So you look at the multi-year. The one thing I want to point out is we went from a $28 million revenue in 21-22 to $21 million in 22-23. As a reminder, we don't have any of the other governor's money in there. And the one-time COVID money was one time. We got it this year and last year, and we don't get it next year, so the revenue goes down. You can see that if you jump down a couple of times down to the expenditures, our expenditures go down, some of that because some of those expenditures went away, but we also included all those other things that we continue to include for one more year. And you can see our ending balance over time in the restricted side is positive right now with what we're going. We do have one-time COVID money that will still be balanced and move into next year. A good portion of that will cover our additional counselors, intervention teachers, and paraprofessionals. We also have a portion of those funds to offset our unrestricted deficit spending, and then we have some COVID expenditures that we'll have to maintain. And I will have updates for you, if not at the next meeting, the first meeting in June, that updates the one-time money and where that's going. So if you look at the combined budget, when you combine both of those together, missing a slide. So I'm missing a slide. I'll come back and look at that. But there is a slide that does the multi-year with all three, with both the unrestricted and the restricted budget. And essentially, there's a general fund ending balance projected next year of about $12.2 million. We have a Fund 17 that we have to account in our ending balances of about $725,000. That gives us a total projected ending balance in 22-23 of $13 million. You take out the mandated 3%, which is $3.3 million next year. That leaves us a remaining budget of 9.6, or a remaining ending balance of 9.6. Now, how is that broken down? Well, we have the 1.25 of board reserve. That's 1.3. We have the restricted part of that budget, which is $4 million. We have some LCFF LCAP dollars that went unspent because for the last 2 years, with everything going on, it's really been hard to get teachers out of the classroom, which is where a lot of those funds are used. Our MA reserve, which is medical administrative accounting, can only be used on special ed programs. There's our Fund 17 that comes back out. We leave that there. Our lottery reserve is about 1.5. So the total of those 6 items is $9.6 million. And you can see that accounts for the remaining balance that comes out after 3%. Now, it doesn't mean some of that money is still not spendable on other things. It's just the accounting for the ending balance where those funds are. We do have other funds. We have 7 other funds. Fund 13 is our cafeteria fund. There's a Fund 17. And again, that was built many years ago when we built the school and we had funding to build the school, where they went to open the school and they didn't have fund to buy the furniture. So the board put money aside to say, hey, the next time we open a school, there needs to be funds to pay for that furniture. And that's what that's sitting there for. We have our OPEB account to cover as our post-employee benefits start to increase over time. We can pull that fund to offset those costs. Right now we pay as we go, and we're not seeing a lot of increase on that right now. 21, 25, the next 4 accounts are really funding that is used for facility improvement. Fund 21 is our Measure B funding. Fund 25 is the money that we receive from developer fees. Our school hardship is the money that we received when we built Mary Casey back and bought the land for the next site. And that can only be used on that Lone Tree site. And we're using to pay for the architectural planning and some of the work we're doing there. And so that money, you can see we're projecting that'll be all used up by the end of this year. And then our capital project is money that when we sold Brentwood Elementary, which is now Liberty Adult School across from Liberty High School, that money had to go into a fund, and we're using that for only facility type work. So those are the other funds. In closure, we really need to watch enrollment and attendance in ADA and how that, not only what's going on and what it looks like next year, but how it affects our ADA and revenue. We need to monitor our costs and our expenditures. We need to monitor just the expenditures and what happens to those over time. There's a lot going on at the state economy. We know it's positive right now, and we just need to see where the rules fall out so we can better get our budget aligned to what that's going to be. And the budget will be brought to you in 22-20 at your next board meeting to approve for the 22-23 budget. Be glad to answer any questions at this time.
We spoke about it earlier about the transportation. That's something that is far off.
That's a good question. That when school services spoke at the county office just a week ago, they were saying that with all the other one-time money, that's sort of gone to a back burner, so it's not a high priority. But there's one is where they'll fully fund districts on what they should get to cover transportation. That's one option. The other option is for the districts that currently have transportation costs, they'll use that number as the reimbursement. Or a third one is they're going to give you money to provide door-to-door transportation for every kid. So there's kind of a wide range out there, but there's only so much money out there. So if they move money over there, they got to take it away from somewhere else. And that's the negotiations going on. And what school service said, that's sort of fallen down the priority level of trying to do some of the other stuff. And what they said, it's that from a politics and a election year process, they'd rather say, here's a whole bunch of base funding and unrestricted money that we're giving to the districts, rather than saying, hey, we're paying for transportation. It's much more positive note to say we gave them a bunch of base money.
I think they're also hearing from the field in how difficult it is to hire bus drivers for the routes that we have now. So trying to add exponentially more routes would be pretty challenging in most areas.
It's not a huge amount compared to, we pay $380,000 an hour to talk about all that to buy it. So,
It's that we're watching it, but from sort of what happened at May Revise and before the May Revise, we knew that was a thought process that was really being pushed. Following the May Revise and the movement that's going on in the legislature, it's not such a priority that they see coming forward. We could be surprised, but it's going to come in any number of ways, and they haven't decided. The Assembly has a different version than
I think his question was how much are we paying?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Right now for transportation, our costs, let me get that. I don't want to take that, but it's in the,
That's not too far off. It might be a
Yeah.
little bit higher
I
than
think it's
that.
higher than that.
It's hard because there's a little bit of, it gets conflated between the special education number and the general education number. And so we want to make sure you're getting the right thing. But what we get doesn't cover our cost for the students that we're providing transportation from. And so one of the pieces might cover some of that, which would be positive. Yeah. We'll get you. No, it's not a huge number.
Yeah,
We'll
we
get
get
to that.
We get about $170,000 in transportation funding, and we know it's over 500 grand
Yeah.
because we have the special education costs to the JPA we're part of. We have the regular ed cost to the JPA. And then for those kids that doesn't cover, we have to pay private transportation companies for our special ed to go out of county. And that's on top of that in addition. And here very quickly, here's the multi-year of the budgets combined. And what I want to point out on here is really the bottom line. In 21-22, our reserve to revenue is about 10.7. Next year at about 11%. And you can see it grows after that. Right now, the way the documents are coming out is we're going to be held to a 10% reserve in 22-23. But when we enact the contingency language, we'll fall under, and we should be in a state where we're really close to being able to monitor that. And if we need to do something, we'll come back and have that conversation with you.
Any other questions for Robin?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I really want to thank you for that thorough explanation of where we are on the budget. I was able to follow and it's very clear. And so I appreciate you advising the board on where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. I could go on for another couple hours, but I don't think that'd be appropriate tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Robin. Moving on to item number 10.5, presentation on draft local control accountability plan.
Michael Bowen's coming up.
Good evening, board. So what you have in front of you is the local control accountability plan, the LCAP. For next school year, this is a draft for your review. I will be back in 2 weeks for approval. It is a year 2 plan of our 3-year LCAP cycle. And so it's all there for your review, and certainly I'm available at any time for any questions should you have them.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for the homework.
We would make it shorter if they would let us.
That's all right. Okay, moving on to item 10.6, approval of resolution number 2022-06.
Yeah, good evening, board. This is essentially simply it's awarding the contract to Overa to build our 14th school, a K-8 school on the Lone Tree property.
Where is Overa from?
They're a Northern California company, RGM. That's our current our current construction management firm. It's a company they've worked with before, and they're a larger firm in the region. They're not a Brentwood firm, but they are a California firm. And so this is in front of you tonight to award the contract, which starts a whole long process. Richmond, this is the cost to build the school. We also have insurance. We also have the cost of doing the construction management firm, and we also have some site prep that we have to do relative to DTS that will be added on top of that. The total cost will be about $78 million out of Measure B, developer fees, and the rest of the hardship funding combined. And we'll come back to you probably in July to look at working through the process to go through a bond sale to fund that out in the out years. Again, we'll spend the next 6 to 12 months in planning and probably breaking ground sometime next January, somewhere along in there. We'll have Overa come back and do some other stuff, but there's lots of stuff going on. But this is in front of you tonight to award the contract to Overa.
And when you say breaking ground next January, you mean 2024, correct?
And again, I want to come back to you with a good date, but it normally takes at least six to 8 months. We have to plan, then it has to go to DSA, and we'll have the phase where we can do the groundwork, and then they'll approve the rest of that.
23. So January 23.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution.
No, that would be,
We'll come back with you timeline.
Okay.
Let me get back on that.
So 2023, not 2024.
Yeah, we'll open the school in July of '24, and we'll probably break ground
Okay.
sometime later after January.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question and clarification.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2022-06.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.6, resolution 2022-06. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item 10.7, approval of resolution 2022-07.
And it is that time of the year, every election cycle, where we need to do a resolution approving the next election coming up for our school board. So all the regulations are in there. We hope that current people who are sitting here will continue to run, but there'll be 3 seats up.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2022-07.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.7, the approval of resolution number 2022-07. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Item 10.8, approval of contract for the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Yeah, so actually we fibbed a little bit earlier in that we let him have cake and told him he was approved, but his is a 2-part approval process, so there's also a contract that comes along with that.
I'm gonna adjust the salary. That's the way.
You are the board, you can do whatever you'd like. So.
Madam Secretary, expense reimbursement for 6. On the contract. It's Chris's. Yeah.
Oh, we just missed a pronoun. Okay, my apologies. I'll catch that. We will make that change.
Aside from those noted changes, does anybody else have any comment?
Motion that we approve the assistant superintendent's contract for July 2022 to July 2025 contract.
That's correct.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 10.8, the contract for Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Gursky, if I may, I missed something on 10.4.
All right,
Actually,
let's
probably the
circle
most
back to
important.
10.4.
Most important voice to me is just a huge thanks to my accounting department, especially Melissa Guzman. She went well beyond with all the work we have to do and 2 new pieces of software to pull this off on time to get to 2 yearly. Just huge kudos to her and the amount of work she had to do to get this to in the state that it allowed me to present to you and get the information. So sorry, I meant to do that in the item and brain fog, sorry. But she deserves all the credit for this.
Yeah,
What's
just
the
to-
name again?
Melissa Guzman?
Yeah, just to add, normally we would have our 2 meetings would be the 2nd and 3rd week in June, but because of this year, the way that the school year fell, those are our promotion dates. And so that's why we did the 1st. And it puts a lot of strain on the business department to try to take what the government says or the governor says in May and turn it into a budget. So it's well-deserved appreciation for
Please
them.
pass on our thanks as well.
For Melissa.
Okay, do any board members have comment or future agenda item requests? If there are none, I believe we are adjourned. Our next board meeting will be June 15th, right back here at 6 PM.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.